Good morning, everyone. Guys, I've got some inside information for you guys. But first, I'm going to tell you what the mainstream are saying, and then I'm going to tell you what my sources are talking about and what they've told me. Now, guys, this relates to what's been happening in Ukraine. It relates to the first downed F-16s. And what's been happening, I'm going to tell you what the mainstream media are talking about, so what we know, what we can take from that. And then I'm going to give you my speculation, my opinion, and I'm also going to tell you what I've been told, guys. And I have to say that these are non-confirmed reports, but they are from people on the inside. So, you know, I can't be done for fake news or anything. Guys, as always, do your own research. I put links in these videos for you guys to follow the breadcrumbs yourselves. So let's just get into it then. I'll share this article quickly. And guys, the reality of this is when I first heard this, I thought, wow, if these have been taken down by Russians, this is actually a huge thing. The reality is it's much, much worse. So here we are, guys. So I always go with these guys, Politico. They seem to be quite a good source. They're not too biased. So where are we? Ukrainian pilot killed in F16 crash. Colonel Oleksiy Moonfish Mez was fervent advocate of giving Ukraine the advanced fighter jets. Guys, honestly, like when you find out the real reason or the speculated real reason, it's just insane. Kiev, Ukraine lost the first of its US-made F-16 fighters during Monday's massive missile and drone attack by Russia, killing the pilot, Lieutenant Oleksiy Mez, one of the country's first to be qualified to fly the advanced fighters. During the aerial battle, the F-16 aircraft demonstrated their high efficiency. 4 enemy cruise missiles were shot down by airborne weapons. The Ukrainian Army General Staff said in a statement Thursday, during the approach to the target, contact with one of the aircraft was lost. As it turned out later, the plane crashed. Remember that word, guys, crashed. The Air Force also issued a memorial statement on Thursday. Mez, who used the call sign Moonfish. He historically fought his last battle in the sky. Oleksiy destroyed 3 cruise missiles and 1 kamikaze drone while repelling a massive Russian combined air and missile attack. I'm sure missiles are in the air as well, but let's not worry about that. Oleksiy saved Ukrainians from deadly Russian missiles, unfortunately at the cost of his own life. And then it goes on here, guys. Mez was one of the most vocal pilots, calling for Ukraine to be given F-16s, together with another pilot, Andrei Pilishkov, who was killed in a crash in August 23. Mez traveled to the US to lobby for better jets to protect Ukraine. I'll read this bit because it's the end. Oleksiy was an exemplary pilot, always excellent student, always the first, always the best. Tatiana Shevchuk, a friend of both pilots, wrote on Facebook, he was the first Ukrainian pilot to sit in the controls of an F-16 and the first to fly combat missions. And guys, from this, he crashed, so he clearly wasn't ready. Now, so I'm going to give you what I've been told was happening, and I'm going to tell guys, and this is from my sources, from, you know, people in that industry, people in Ukraine, people who, you know, this is a lot of word of mouth from Ukraine. Obviously, you know, the official statement is what it is, but from my sources, here we guys, I'm just going through the messages here. Hang on, because it's quite a bit. Right, here we are, guys. So, yes, mate, I'll try and find out what happened. So he's put, my best guess is poor training, some kind of accident due to poor training, guess some basic mistakes, like you said with the training. So I've done a lot of training out in Ukraine with the military, and I identify these problems before they happen. You know, I've been telling the Ukrainian military what their problems are since 2014. Nothing like this would happen in the West. No, right, okay. His buddy Moonfish probably went too low in the dark of night or collided with another drone or took out a drone from close proximity. It's widely believed that kill radius of the Shahed drone is 500 meters. Right, so basically what he's saying is they were trying to get pictures. Yeah, so they were trying, as I understand it, they were trying to get pictures for, trying to get some cool pictures. Now, what happened was they were trying to get cool pictures in the sunset, and they were not taking, they were not paying consideration to the flight rules, and they crashed because they were trying to take pictures. Now, guys, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if it's just speculation. I don't know if it's just rumors, but that's what I've been told. Now, the reason I think it's got a lot of credibility is when I used to train the Ukrainians, when I used to go out there and do training missions, I'd say, first of all, you do a gap analysis. So you'd say, right, I'm going to come out with you on your training. I'm going to see what you guys do, and then we're going to put in, procedures, and work on the areas that you guys need it. So, guys, there's a few ways I can talk about this. I'll go with this one. So I said, right, what's on your training today? They said, oh, we're going to do vehicle stop searches. So I said, all right, okay, vehicle stop searches, cool. I said, right, I'll come. So they took me out to this place in the middle of nowhere. It was like driving through forests and forests. I was like, wow, okay, how long? Anyway, we finally got there. And it was an old, I think it was like an old steelworks, or it was an old industrial unit or something. And basically they got me out and I had to stand by this bridge. So I was stood by this bridge and this car came along. And then honestly, guys, I'll tell you what happened and I'll tell you what my thoughts were. So there's a car and it's driving under this bridge. The next thing, a guy, I don't even know if it's called abseiling, but a guy comes down on a rope upside down. Guys, I'm not making this up. He comes down on a rope upside down and just dangles in the middle of the road with a pistol. Now, he's got that pistol pointing at the car. The car stops, and then the car gets swarmed from both sides by, guys, and they drag the guys out, and then they do the checkpoint. While all this is happening, there's people taking photos everywhere, just photos, pictures, videos, pictures, photos, videos. I was like, wow, okay. So first thing I said was, okay, what happens if the car driver doesn't stop? And he says, oh, well, he'll shoot him. I said, what? You're going to shoot somebody? You literally, if somebody doesn't stop in a checkpoint, you're just going to open fire? Oh, well, anyway, I explained, and I went through it and I said, right, okay, how do you know this guy's a bad guy? What if it's the wrong person? I said, is that what you do? And he said, well, and I got to it and he said, no, we don't actually do anything like this. It's just for the photos. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we get good photos. I said, right, okay, guys, this needs to stop. And then when I started doing training with them, I was running these guys absolutely ragged. They were making mistakes, they were falling, they were out of breath, they could, and then I explained to the guys in charge, I said, look, if you're not training till failure, if you're not training till exhaustion, if you're not training till you physically cannot do it anymore, then it's not training. Because something in the British military, you say, you don't train until you get it right. You train it until you don't get it wrong. There's a different, it sounds like, what? That's the same. No, it's not. When you train to get things right, as soon as you've got it right, that's it, you're done. Right, guys, we can do it once. That's it, fine, we go. But you need to train so you don't get it wrong. You need to have muscle memory, reflex. So these things, when you're doing them, you don't need to think about them. You've done them 1,000 times already. You've done it in the cold. You've done it in the dark. You've done it in the cold and dark. You've done it when you're hungry. You've done it when you're tired. You've done it when you're wet. That's how training should be. And to film this, if you film some of the training that you would do in the parachute regiment or some special forces units, the training looks terrible because the guys are absolutely exhausted. They're not broken, but they're physically they're spent, and that's when you need the training. Because guys, guess what? In these wars, in these conflicts, things are not going to be easy. And if you only train in if you only talk about things in a classroom and then use bottle tops, moving them around, and then go out on the ground and do it once with some photographers, that's not training, and it never will be. You need to train to exhaustion. So Going back slightly, when my friend told me, he said, yeah, you know, they were trying to get some cool camera shots. They were trying to get some good, you know, some good video footage of the F-16 flying into the sunset. I just thought, well, you know what? That kind of makes sense, knowing the culture as I do. But guys, why is this more terrifying? Why is this actually more terrifying than a Russian shooting them down? Because it just shows that the pilots are not ready. You know, this is one of the first pilots that was qualified to fly the F-16, and he crashed. Whether you believe what happened, you know, whether you believe that these guys were taking pictures flying into the sunset, or whether you believe what I've just told you, it doesn't matter. From the article I just showed you there, guys, you know, he definitely crashed. He's not around anymore. Ukrainian pilot killed in F-16 crash. Now, the reasons behind that crash, again, you know, we can speculate, we can talk about that. The reality is, he was the first pilot and he's crashed. So you can pretty much say that the rest of the pilots, there's question marks over their capacity now. So what does that mean? Well, we've already seen it in the United States. We've already seen the gates being opened for NATO pilots, retired NATO pilots. So these guys, they will have had, so the Ukrainian pilots, they will have been rushed through. It's very hard when you're rushing things through. You've got Joe Biden saying, I want these pilots qualified. And you've got the, you know, you've got the operational command in America, Denmark, United Kingdom, wherever. You know, they're saying, Joe, mate, they're not ready. We need to teach them basic stuff. They don't know the basics. And he's saying, no, push them through. Just get them done, get them out. You start missing lessons out, and you're like, right, okay, just send them. I'm being told from above to just send them. I've just sent them. It's off, you know, it's done. So you get a huge problem with interpretation when you're not speaking, when you don't have native speakers teaching that lesson. It's one of the reasons I learned Russian. Learn how to speak Ukrainian. So when I'm teaching, I could teach and use the students' own language. And then when they're talking, I have an understanding of what the problems are. Because if you just go through an interpreter, especially if that interpreter doesn't understand the subject matter. So how many interpreters are out there who speak Ukrainian, English, and have understanding of F-16 combat capacity? I can pretty much tell you the number now, guys. My speculation is that is zero. Although there'll be some now because they'll be used in the in the first courses. Anyway, guys. So what I'm talking about. So when you rush these people through these training courses, that's what happens. You don't get a seasoned veteran. So you've got these minimum drivers now, minimum pilots who are flying. And it's there, guys. You know, whether we agree with what's just happened or not, it doesn't matter. They have crashed. So they're clearly not ready. Now, what you will have a surplus of retired F-16 pilots. And these guys will have 22, 25, you know, a lot of years experience, you know, in the cockpit of F-16s. These pilots will be able to go straight over. They'll be able to sit in that pilot and go. And then you will have really experienced pilots who know what the aircraft can do, and more importantly, know what the aircraft cannot do. They'll know how to operate. They'll know how to operate in teams, or what do they call it? It's not teams or even in the sky. It's somebody tell me in the comments what it's called when you're in a formation. They'll know how to support ground troops. They'll know how to evade radar, and they'll know all this stuff instinctively. Remember what I said earlier. You know, you need to train until you don't get things wrong. Think about how much money, you know, the governments will have put into a pilot, a NATO pilot that's got 22 years experience, 20 years experience. How much money will they have had on training exercises, you know, operational deployments, you know, all this sort of stuff. You can't just throw money at this like Joe Biden thinks, or whoever's making these decisions. You can't just throw money at these problems and think that they're gonna sort themselves out. No. That experience, you get that with time. And a lot of that experience you get from making bad decisions. And you only make bad decisions when you're in that controlled environment where you're allowed to make a bad decision. You've got an instructor behind you saying, I don't know, Raven, Okay, call sign Raven. Right, you're doing this, you're doing it. Right, stop. You're doing it really wrong. You were just going to call, this was just going to happen. And you're like, oh, wow, right, okay, thanks. Yeah, right, I totally get that. I get that. I won't do that again. And you only get that by training. You don't get it any other way. There's even an argument to say that even in an operational environment, you don't get the experience you do when you're training. Now, I'm saying that because every time you go on I'm saying this from an infantry point of view, every time you go on a patrol as an infantryman, and I'd say it would be the same with being a pilot, on an operational patrol, you don't always get into a fight every time you go out the base. Like pilots, they're not always going to come under some operational, requirement every time they're in the air. When you're training, when you're on exercises, every time you go out, you can expect something to happen. You're going to be in a fight. You're going to have to run a serial. You're going to have to react. You're going to have to do something. So in that context, the training, the argument is that the training could be better than the training gives you more training than operational environment, because it's kind of, it is what it says, training. When you do operational stuff, I mean, I'm sure there's people who went to Iraq, Afghanistan, other deployments, and they never saw any trouble just because of where they were. They went out on the ground, nothing happened. So they're not learning anything. They're just going out there, and anybody could do that, because the thing is, when you go out on the ground and you're a soldier, you don't want to come under, you don't want to be attacked. You want to get by as peaceful as you can. So that's what's happening there, guys. Okay, the first pilot has, the first pilots have been the first F-16s have been lost in Ukraine. Pilot error. This is only going to lead to NATO pilots flying these aircraft, retired NATO pilots flying these aircraft. I've been saying this for absolutely months, and then the next stage is going to be, right, okay, once these F-16s start to become combatable in the sense that they start to have an effect on the Russian movement. Once that happens, then the Russians are going to have to make the decision: do we take out all air bases in Ukraine that these F-16s are flying from? If they do, then the F-16s are just going to be flown from Poland. Guys, that is what's happening in Ukraine. Well, that's what's happening in regards to the F-16s. Anyway, guys, I'm going to mag to grid. I'll give you guys another video later on today where more wild shenanigans happen. But that's it, guys. I'm going to mag to grid. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.